So I'm going to start off today just like I did with the last one. How many people were at my workshop for the hex bar? All right, those are the people I instantly like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to encourage, again, anybody that wants to come up close, feel free. It seems like the chairs get further and further and further back as the weekend goes along. And at any point, if anybody has questions on any of this topic, raise your hand. I would rather answer things as we go along instead of push things back and potentially add some confusion in. So today I'm going to talk about rotational power and or rotational training for the everyday athlete. I have a very specific perspective when it comes to rotational training and how I believe it should be implemented on a continuum, and I hope that you all are in agreement with that at the end of this so we can effectively train our clients in a safe and good way. So first of all, we need to define what is rotational power. Rotational power is the generation of a force around a singular axis through the integration of muscular and joint systems. So the best part about sport and athletics that we love is really how fluid the system moves in order to create one result at the end, right? So a rotational power movement or a rotational training movement is the synchronization of all these different activities, pulling and pushing and manipulating in different manners in order to create the trajectory and or power of what we're looking to do. And we see rotation on an everyday basis outside of what we think we do in the gym, because we may see people doing some rotation to get their core going, get their abs good, but we're trying to help people get better on a day-to-day basis so their life is easier. That's my goal. So first of all, we need to identify what rotational power is. We see it in every single sport we do, and unfortunately I put Conor McGregor's picture up there because I was hoping to do the Conor McGregor arms, but I can't do that now. But we see rotational power in every single sport we have, whether you're throwing discus, shot put, throwing a football, a baseball, swinging a bat, and I think one of the more overlooked is lower body power, whether I'm skating with power, whether I'm throwing a kick in a striking match, a soccer kick, javelin throw, everything is an integration of how can I maximize every piece of my body to generate the most force I can. So we see that in everyday activities that we do as well. It may not be with power, it may not be with maximum trajectory, but we see it in everything we do. How many people in this weekend alone went to get on or off the elevator and somebody was standing right in front of the elevator trying to get on or off before you? Anybody? Because I'm from New York City, and the subway is that every single day. So there's always somebody standing outside of the one train trying to get on before you can get off. And what happens is, when you bump shoulders with that person, do I know that I'm going to rotate at my thoracic spine like I'm supposed to? Or am I just going to rotate where my body knows where to rotate? That may be in my lumbar. That may be in a part of the body that is compromised or vulnerable that will cause injury. So unless I learn to prepare the body properly, I could potentially put myself in a bad situation. Chopping wood, starting a lawnmower, swimming, I love kayaking, hiking, any of that kind of stuff. Picking up a baby, it's all rotational stuff. All rotational activity that we take advantage of and take for granted every day because we just see it as something we normally do, but are we doing it to the optimal power, and are we working with our clients in order to get to that optimal range of motion? So first, we want to identify what are the key areas in rotational training that we need to focus on. This really pains me because I'm a diehard Yankee fan, but I grew up playing against Rick Porcello, who's the Cy Young winner for the Red Sox, so I needed to show him some love. And if anyone can't read these slides, feel free to pull them up on your phone. I will assume you're on Instagram, but we'll be okay with it. So the glenohumeral joint is going to be the top part if we're doing overhead trajectory or anything else. The important thing to understand with the glenohumeral joint is it's one of our primary ball and sockets, but it's also one of our least secure ball and socket joints. Anybody that knows the glenoid fossa, it sets a very open socket for the head of the humerus to rotate in. So because of that, the vulnerability of where we torque, pull, push, range of motion puts us in a compromised spot every single time we utilize that. Can we stay away from injury over time? Absolutely. Does it mean that it's more likely for injury than the hip? Potentially. The second part is understanding that with rotation, the thoracic spine is the main driver, and I will go into the specifics of data points for you guys with the T-spine, why you want that to be your mobility point. But the T-spine is going to help you translate that energy, and I think it's important to start understanding the core less as a rotation factor, but more as an energy transfer. That is where we harness the energy from the ground up or the top down in order to move energy throughout the body. We're less generating in that portion of the body, okay? The next part is the acetabulum. Acetabular femoral part is where we're going to see the maximum rotation in our hip. If I need to move, I'm not going to twist at my lumbar spine. I'm going to try and twist at my hip. And the true hip joint's going to be your AF. But I need to know, do I have the internal and external rotation necessary to complete a pattern with success? And last, which I think is most overlooked, is the medial foot and the ankle joint. The medial foot is what drives rotational power. How many people in here have played baseball or softball? Enough hands, right? So when I am in the batter's box and I'm pushing off, what part of the foot am I driving with when I'm swinging the bat? Inside or outside of the foot? Inside, medial foot. That's why one of the better parts, and I think anyone who saw the rotational lecture Mark Watts did a few years back, you'll see that lateral speed training is a great developer for rotational power, just sheerly on the fact of focusing mid-foot and driving that power through there. Because some athletes have that, some people have that, some people haven't developed that, but we need to understand that if I'm going to push off there, I need to be strongest through there. That is where some of the work with Michelle Dalcourt and Viper has been most influential for me in my rotational training and knowledge on the topic. So if we're going to look into this, we're going to look at the points of interest for our main joints. The main joint points of interest are going to be the glenohumeral joint, like I spoke about, T-spine, and then the acetabular femoral joint. As I said, the glenohumeral joint is inherently unstable. There's extreme rotation for overhead sports in that. Anybody that follows Eric Cressy will get a lot of information on the glenohumeral joint and how you're using it on a day-by-day basis. Anyone that saw Dr. John Russin's workshop earlier also went over how younger athletes who specialize earlier were seeing differences in that joint and how its capacity over time. So it's something that we need to look at starting now. The second part is with the lumbar spine. There's 1.2 to 1.7 degrees of rotation at 45 degrees of trunk rotation. That is not our primary focus for where we're going to see everything, but the body just moves. We don't know how it moves, it just moves. And what I mean by that is, I may know that my back is hurt, but if I'm playing intramural soccer and the ball goes this way and I plant and rotate, is my body going to stop and hesitate to go, well, you know what, you only have 1.2 to 1.7 degrees of rotation at your lumbar, so you probably should twist a little more at the hip. Or will it just do? Your body will just react. It doesn't think about that. Think about the story of the grandmother that saves her grandson under the car and lifts the car. We've all heard crazy stories like that, because your body in situations of doing or not doing more than likely does, and then worries with the consequences later. But for some of us, if we're younger, if we can avoid these consequences, we're going to, because they could be chronic issues for us long term. So from this, 10% of prevalence of low back pain comes from the lumbar area. It's a massive, anyone who's the last workshop is going to see a lot of the lower back pain stuff. The reason I spoke on the hex bar and I'm speaking on this topic is because I have my own low back pain. So it's definitely something that's a point of interest for me. The acetabular femoral joint is going to be more stable than the glenohumeral joint. There's 45 degrees of rotation, internal and external. It's our main pivot point that we're going to see. So mobility comes from the ankle, hip, T-spine. Stability comes from the knee, lumbar, bottom of the foot. And then we're going to have asymmetric mobility that's going to lead to increased low back pain. If we have one side that's a little more mobile than the other, if one side is a little more stable than the other, we're going to see that disjointed action in long term. That's going to affect us. just like the video of the woman that was marching against the wall. You see one side versus the other. Range of motion also decreases with age. So as we use this joint, as we wear it down, we're going to see differences in that over time, and that is something that we need to account for. What I do at 20, I cannot do at 50, I cannot do at 80 just naturally. I need to accommodate through that time, and anything is possible at any age, because I'm one of the bigger proponents that your diagnosis is not who you are. There are differences from person to person, but it's something we pay attention to. Who here knows about the Serape Effect? Okay. Serape Effect was really proposed back in the 70s. Mainly Juan Carlos Santana made it a bigger situation where you focus on the anterior and posterior serape. The serape is a traditional Mexican scarf that wraps around the top of the neck and tucks into the bottom of the pants, top of the pants. So the proposal is understanding that the rotational core is seen from an anterior and posterior, essentially sling of muscles that utilize and work in synchronization in order to maximize power. That's where we see maximum power patterns for us are mostly on diagonals and less on horizontal and vertical. We see the best baseball swings with the most trajectory are that upward swing. Golf swings, same thing. Downward chop, I'm coming on a diagonal. That's why we focus lift and chop patterns. Those diagonals of Serape are the most important parts that we utilize every single day. Now with that, there's an anterior and a posterior Serape. So we need to understand that these slings aren't just one continuous going and moving, but they work in synchronization for each other. And this is how we're going to ultimately maximize what we do from a rotational power standpoint. They also came out with the training octagon, which is the 8 different patterns that you would see from a high to low, low to high, horizontal to diagonal. Again, if you can't read any of this, please look up the slides. There's a lot of great information on it. Screenshot it, take your time. A lot of information to dive into. But today, I want to primarily focus on this. And this is the power pyramid. The power pyramid, in my opinion, is the main way that we should be training all of our clients when it comes to a rotational factor. I think it's important to understand that whether you are 16 or 65 or 100 years old, or you have certain injuries that may limit you in one factor but may not limit you in others, we need to train our clients in the same continuum that we would train any other person. Every person we train should be training towards rotational power. And the way we start that off is at the bottom by having dynamic mobility. Do I have the necessary movement patterns in my joints that need to be mobile and the necessary stability in the joints that need to be stable to successfully move through a pattern? Then from there, we focus on anti-rotation and anti-flexion, because we need to learn to resist before we learn to just go. And that's most of the problem of what we do through our training is we own the pattern and say, hey, this looks cool. I saw somebody throwing the ball up against the wall, and you know what? It seems like good conditioning. Just like how people use box jumps for good conditioning. Well, they could be. You can also do 100 other things that are less dangerous for you, right? So anti-rotation and anti-flexion are one of the key parts that we want to focus on, because in order to transfer energy through the core, I need to own that. And we know that spinal stability is the most important part for us. That's one of our primary things. Does everyone know what the body's main function is in life? Anyone can shout it out? Reproduce. That's up there. Anything else? Number one job of the body, don't die. Don't die. How many situations do you see yourself restricting because your body thinks you're in a different situation? Anybody that heard the talk before, when you're going into that side lunge, having 4 points of contact allows the brain to go, okay, we're in a safe environment. How many people have stretched inside a doorway with their arms because they figured that was the best way to do it? You're not getting full stretch because your body sees nothing but ground in front of you. There's always that in the back of my head. I could potentially fall and hit my head. When your clients diet because they want that six-pack so bad, I don't get it. I'm restricting calories. Why am I not having an awesome body? Because your body sees less calories and says, we don't know if we're getting more, and we can't die. So we're going to save things. That's our body's main function. So I need to understand, how can I stabilize this area that focuses on the spine, which is one of the most crucial parts of me. That's why there's spinal processes on the back, because over time of adaptation, it's a protective mechanism to make sure that nothing gets through that spinal cord. So that's why the core helps me. I need to own that. Rotation is the next portion of that. Once I know how to stabilize, do I know how to move with it? Can I stabilize this and rotate at the hip while rotating at a different joint to produce a certain action with confidence and with success? This top part will be for most, but not for everybody. Ballistic rotation and locomotive ballistic rotation. There is throwing something with power, and then there is moving to generate force to throw something with power. How many people they said they played baseball and softball? If you want to throw a ball as far as you can, what do? Crow hop into it. You run, you get energy, you move. You need to do what you can to produce as much force as possible. And that is with that. So why wouldn't we train our people to eventually move towards that? And that's the question I have for everyone. Base of support. We will always move from the ground upward, because there are things we can do for every single person in each of these perspectives from the ground up. I can do anti-rotation, anti-flexion stuff from the ground. I can do rotational things at specific parts of the body off of the ground. Not everyone has to be up, moving around, standing on one leg on a post to show they can rotate. That's not how we operate. Half kneeling to tall kneeling to bilateral, staggered stance. But you got to understand that there's a mechanism in this that I want to identify before we start getting into some movement patterns. And that is that you'll see on this slide with dynamic mobility and everything, all of the stances available work for dynamic mobility and for anti-rotation, anti-flexion. So ground, half kneel, tall kneel, bilateral, staggered, and unilateral will all work for my dynamic mobility and my anti-rotation, anti-flexion. Once I get past that point to rotation, I must start at that bilateral stance. I do not want to learn rotation in a fixed position, because if the hip is my primary mover, I will only create compensated patterns if I learn rotation without the aid of my hip, without the aid of one of my primary movers. That is not how we operate on a day-by-day basis. I don't learn to just do my T-spine stuff. I may if I'm working with warm-ups for somebody, but if I'm actually diving into doing something, I need this. And I need this. So when we do performance measures, we're not going to see all this in isolation from one another. Rotation is a fluid movement using everything that we have to coordinate with one objective. In order to do that, I must train the body with full coordination, or I will not get to that last objective. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite everyone out, or as many people that want to come out. Oh, the slow walks. And anybody that walks out from this will get a Game of Thrones shame chant. Shame. Shame. So see, these are some of the most basic patterns. If we want everyone get a little space, because we're going to add in some of these mobility patterns first. Then we're going to focus on anti-rotation work, add in a couple new things, because I think, does everyone here know what a power press is? I think we all can nod in unison. We all know what that is. So I want to try and show you guys some unique things for this. So first and foremost, what we're going to do is let's focus on something that's just thoracic. So can everyone go in a quadruped for me? We're going to make sure that you have yourselves hands stacked underneath the shoulders, knees stacked underneath the hips. We're going to do external rotation quadruped reaches. So what I mean by that is I'm going to ask everyone to take your right hand, wave it out with jazz fingers. No reason for the jazz fingers, that's just fun. Hand on the back of our head. And what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to rotate this elbow that's up towards the inside elbow, keeping a stable hip. We're going to do that for 6 reps on each side. Nice and smooth. Where your hand and your head sit in one, you're going to utilize and keep them there. There's a common desire to crank your neck with it because you want to see where you're going, I want you to try and keep that head only in alignment. It turns as far as it can, that's about it, okay? We're going to do 6 on each side. So the question is, ideally, when do you exhale? You could do that at any point in the movement, so I would ideally inhale towards the top and exhale as I'm moving through. As the elbow goes towards the inside elbow, that's when I would exhale out. Breathe in as you're coming back up. Bird dogs. Who knows how to do bird dogs? So then we'll skip it. We're here to learn stuff today, right? New things? Because we can go over crunches and V-sits, but I think we've all done those before. How many people have opened the book with T-spine reach? Okay. So who wants to come out and do a T-spine reach so everyone can look at it? Because we want to make sure that there's a main thing with this. I'm going to utilize a Viper for this because we don't have a foam roller. Thank you, Michelle Dalcourt. Definitely not using this the way he wanted it to. So if we're opening the book, we're going to lean towards it. Anybody that needs to stand up and hasn't seen this before, feel free to come in as close as possible. Knee's going to be up at 90 degrees. Ideally, we're going to keep this here, leg flat, keep the foot up. Awesome. That's fine. So there's opening the book wide open, where I would keep it like that. A main thing that most people don't focus on when you are opening or you're doing the clocks is when you start this position, what I want you to do, slide that top hand forward as far as you can protract. Now go up and around. Well, what it's going to do is it's actually stabilizing so we're not cranking on that back. Slide those things forward, then open up. See, so right now, one of the best things to help us with mobility is weight and resistance. Weight and resistance helps us with that. What is the natural weight and resistance we have against our body? Gravity. So the best part in this movement is seeing that gravity's slowly going to pull this hand down and slowly pull that shoulder down in order to try and gain more motion through the T-spine, okay? And you feel a little cranking in your back because it's down there? Yeah. So that's why what you're going to do is you're going to have a foam roll underneath there in order to make sure you have some elevation for there. How many people have done world's greatest stretch? I don't know if people are doing the opens or I'm getting hands, so. Good. Awesome. There's a main focus I want to look at with anti-rotation, anti-flexion. How many people do anti-rotation from the side? Enough? How many people focus on it and train it from the rear? Purposely? Not as many. How many people focus and train it from the front? More, right? So what I want to do is I want to try and focus that with some of you, and I want you to feel the difference. So we're going to do one with loaded carries, one with anterior and one with lateral, okay? So I need 2 volunteers for the loaded carry, 2 volunteers for the anterior, and 2 volunteers for the lateral. I got 1 stand up, 2, 3, 4. Can I get 5? Anybody 5? Can I get a 5? We got 5 right here. Somebody get 6. We got 6. Oh, we got 7 now. Awesome. I'll take them all. Okay. Loaded carry group. 1, 2. Can each of you grab one of the kettlebells, please? Just one. Anterior group. 1, 2. You guys are going to act like you don't like each other right now. Okay? I'm going to have you turn that way towards the wall. You're going to turn that way towards the wall. That way, good. Push it out in that push-up position. You can come in just half a step. Push it out. I want you guys just to hold that. Rest of the presentation, just hold it. All right, loaded carries.
What kind of weight?
Whatever weight you want.
Okay.
We're doing a suitcase carry. Okay. Suitcase hold. Good. You're going to stand. I want you to go half kneel.
Right knee up?
Yes. Awesome. Laterals. 1 lateral, 2 lateral. I'll do lateral with you. Who else? There you go. Good. The important part with lateral, so you guys are both going to face the crowd over here. You're going to get a lot of eye-to-eye contact, which is good. So what we're going to do here is I want you guys, when you hold the handle, interlock the fingers, creates 1 unit. You're going to press out. and you want to externally rotate that arm and that humerus to make sure that you keep everything locked in. Otherwise, it's a massive shoulder workout. If I'm just holding it like this, all I'm doing is working on front delts, rear delts. I'm going to have awesome arms, but a crappy core, okay? So we're going to externally rotate and hold that out. What I want you guys to do is challenge each other, is get yourself in a little more of an athletic stance. And on opposite counts, you're going to do sidewalks out. So you're going to step out, 1, step back in, 2, and just continue that pattern. Okay? God, you guys took a break? You guys did too? Oh my, unbelievable. So you see how these are different patterns we can utilize with people just through this movement. How does this feel for you guys?
Yeah, need to switch sides.
You feel it? Oh, you guys can switch sides. I don't want to create a pattern. You guys have like 30 more minutes, so you're good. These are exercises you can do with yourself. These are exercises you can do with your partner. I've tried these with my wife. My wife and I can't work out together.
What is this for? Is it a press or just for holding?
It could be a press that'll be for this. So you can lock this in if you want to down.
Okay.
This way you're doing less shoulder and more just stack. Once you stack the bones, you're going to have less pressure on yourself. So here's something else I want you guys to do. Everyone can rest. Can everyone thank them for volunteering? Can we get around? Okay, so here's the next part of this. Let's think of activities that are not just standing in or being in position, side shuffle, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and introduce to you guys an activity that we like to use because we like it, and then we think we're going to add in because it makes it more difficult. So I need 2 volunteers that are confident in their glute bridge. 1 again, and then 2. Love it. Team USA and Team D1. Amazing. All right, so here's what we're going to do. You're going to go down there, head down that way, feet down this way. You're going to go over here, head down that way, feet down this way. Yep. So what we're going to do is, if you guys remember from the Serape Effect, we work opposite sides, right? So my one side glute that's going to be stabilizing is going to work on my other side oblique that's going to be working with it as well. I'm going to ask you to hold this here. I'm going to ask you to hold this here. We're going to do the same thing, interlocking fingers. Lean back. Good. Bring your feet in. We're going to do glute bridges. We're going to do 3 seconds at the hold top and 2 seconds down. So it's 1 count, hold for 3, 1 count, hold for 3. Okay? We're just going to do this for 3 rounds. Okay? So you guys can start it off. Drive those heels into the ground. Hips up. 1, 2, 3. Going down. Up. Everyone count them out. 1, 2, 3. I didn't hear anyone. Down. Up. 1, 2, 3. Good, and relaxed. Awesome. So now we're going to make this a little more difficult because there was no pull here. So I need you guys to shimmy out. Shimmy, 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 shimmy. Shimmy, shimmy, shimmy. Yeah, it's a scientific term. So here's where it gets fun. Lift this leg up off the ground. Lift this leg up off the ground. You guys have good tension? Single leg glute bridges. Up and hold it for 3. Up. 1, 2, 3, and down. Up. 1, 2, 3, and down. I'm going to put a little pull on it so you guys have the better. Up. 1, 2, 3, and down. 2 more. Up. 1, 2, 3, and down. Last one before the hamstring gives out. Up. 1, 2, 3, and down. Everyone give them a round of applause. Thank them. So the other side of this, for anyone that hasn't tried this stuff before, who here has done a figure 4 horizontal bridge? Anybody? Great movement from Tom House. Anybody that wants to come out and try it now, feel free. The figure 4 horizontal bridge is me sitting here, one leg underneath, this leg out. I lean myself back from here, hands up top, and this leg is driving into the ground to bridge up. Hamstring and glute, okay? So for the other side, I'll switch it, and the way to add this up and change it is leg up in the air, leg down, drive, and up. Drive, and up. Okay? Anybody want to try that? Nobody? Okay, no cream. Anybody seen Super Troopers and knew that reference? Oh, you'd have been my favorite person immediately. Rotational work. Rotational work can be done with a lot of things. I would emphasize using it with bands, cables, Vipers, anything possible. How many people were here with the Viper workshop the other day? How many people was that their first time using a Viper? Different, right? So what I want to do is I want to try and introduce some rotational patterns that we would see to show how I can get my clients to work a little better. This is what I'm going to ask everybody to come on in, stand up, move around. We're going to be doing some movements. We're going to do some application. We're going to do some coaching. If you don't want to stand up and come in, that's fine. You just will not have a good view. No big deal. You just won't see any of it. So great. We'll keep this view open so this way, you know, the camera keeps their eyes on the prize. Okay, so who here has not used a Viper before that wants to try the Viper? All the hands went down. Your hand stayed up the longest, so I'm going to bring it in here. So if we're focusing on rotational stuff, especially when we're talking about any of our clients that we're using, most of our clients are Gen Pop. Unless you're working in an athletic-based facility, like I worked in pre-C speed school in Fair Lawn for a little while, and then now I've worked for Equinox for 5 years. So most of my clients are Gen Pop. I'm not using my CSCS to the maximum of its capabilities where I'm at currently. But I want to make sure that I can use that specifically with those movement patterns, okay? So do we think unilateral work is good for our clients, yes or no? Yes, right? So let's try and add some stuff in that we would do with reaches we would see on a daily basis. So I'm going to have you hold the Viper. This is a 4-kilo Viper. So if you do like Vipers, you're going to have to learn to translate kilos to pounds. What I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to hold your legs out a little bit wider than shoulder width, okay? We're going to do your rocking split lunges. So you're going to sit back into that, just like the previous one was.
And this is down or up here?
You can keep it up there, okay? And you're going to go back to the other side. So we can see how we're loading this from here. And then the other progression from here would be if I stayed up, all I'm going to do from here is I'm going to shift this hip through and reach down. Correct. I want you to fully extend that arm though. There we go. Back up. Down the same side. We're going to do 8, and I want you to tap it through your toes. Come through here. Good. Back up. Good. See how rotation doesn't have to be a massively impactful movement, but rotation, this is more similar to what we would see on a daily basis with any of our people. Anything that happens, if I need to grab something that's by my foot, I'm going to just reach for it. This is practical moving to literal. This is us practicing what we're doing to real environment activity. That's what I want to prepare for. If they're athletes, their real-life activity is that sport, what they need to perform in. If they're not athletes, this is that everyday activity, right? You can relax. I'll take this. Everyone, thank you. So we need to learn these movement patterns from the bottom up, okay? So the important part is understanding, also when I rotate, I can keep myself here, and the next part would be learning how I pivot with this foot. Because ideally, when I do this, I'm going to want to pivot down and bring myself up to standing. Down and up to standing. You can do this with a kettlebell, you can do this with bands, you can do this with any type of activity, but this is just a good piece of equipment that we have here right now that people can toy around with. So the next part is, I need one more volunteer for some band work. Who wants to do some band work? Thank you. Who saw the prenatal workshop before? Good?
Yes.
Really good? Make sure you rate her and give her a good score then, okay?
Yeah, then I can present one.
Yes, there we go. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to do just a rotational pattern where you're just moving the hip and you're coming back. Because power patterns, mainly with torque that we know, we're going to have one loaded kickstand spot and one movement spot. So this hip will move, but as we know, if you were doing any baseball swing, golf swing, whatever, if I did a golf swing and both my legs moved, I would not be on the PGA Tour, okay? I am not on the PGA Tour. Had to clarify that, okay? So what I'm gonna have you do is you're gonna go from this stable spot, and I just want you to rotate your hip so you're learning this movement first, okay? Good, come back. Good, nice and slow and smooth and own it, okay? 6. Good, go. Good, now I want you to extend that hand like you're punching. So you're gonna be here. You're gonna bring it out, okay? Good. Now, what was the first thing you saw when she rotated? You see that left foot rotates out a little bit? That's an instant mobility notice. So that pivoted out because it needed to pivot out. Is that a game breaker for somebody? No. Just allow them to move what's comfortable in their pattern. Will it get better? Yes, it'll get better. But then we also focus with this, so you can keep going. And then I may focus on bringing the resistance a little lower, so you can punch up. There we go. Bring it down. Do those patterns all feel different?
Yeah.
Right?
As soon as you moved it, it was like,
Once it's a change, your body's mechanism has to difference that. The important thing, like I said before, is your body usually uses diagonals, not horizontals. Everyone thank her. Your body uses diagonals, not horizontals. So it's going to work best through that. So how many times do we focus on our anti-rotation holds from a diagonal? Like a chop hold or a lift hold. Do we do that with bands? We can. So I would ask that. Who here has not done a chop lift or a chop anti-rotation or a lift anti-rotation with a band before? Or in general, hold. Come on out. You were just the one courageous enough to say that you haven't done it before.
Yeah.
I give you a lot of credit. So we're going to go half kneel.
Which knee do you want down, inside, outside?
Right knee up top. Love your accent, by the way. Back foot, nice and relaxed, awesome. So with here, the important thing again, we're going to externally rotate the humerus to make sure this is all locked in. But the beautiful part about the body is I can still move the radius and the ulna, okay? So manipulate your hands how you need to. So if this is up here, correct. All you do is shift those hands just a little bit, and you feel that hold, right? Right now you're probably feeling it a little bit through the shoulder. You're probably feeling through your grip. But if you focus yourself enough, and we learn this over time, that movement patterns are essentially moving. Have you ever had to move a big piece of furniture? Anyone seen Ross Geller trying to move the couch and pivot, right? So if I ask a group of my family members, you can relax, to move, and my grandmother's helping me move my armoire, who do you think's the first person to give out? Grandma, right? And that's understandable. That's completely fine. I would never make her do that, by the way. You guys are all mean for thinking that. But that's the first person that would probably give out. That is most of our muscle groups when we have deficiencies in specific areas. If I have something that's a little bit weaker than the other parts, that is the first one that you will notice. That's why if I do a certain pulling movement and I go, well, I don't feel this in my lats, I feel it in my rear delt, I feel it in this muscle instead. That's the weak pattern. That's the fatigued pattern. If I feel that fatigue first, that's what's going to radiate and go, I can't do this anymore, I can't do this anymore, I can't do this anymore. So we need to understand that with these patterns, and we work through that. That will get stronger. These exercises we do are no different than a science project in high school. Who here did group projects in your science class in high school? Were you the person that got stuck doing all the work? Because that happens sometimes. So what do you do when somebody relies on that in the group and makes one person do the activity? You make them do separate projects. Right? That's why we focus on this kind of stuff. So we see where my deficit is. So we see where that angle is that I need to focus on to become a better individual so that does not give out next time. Everyone thank him. So understanding that anti-rotation and anti-flexion are all big important parts about this rotation, I need to understand, there's no slide past that. I need to understand when I'm applying this, how do I add this in? Rotation work and anti-rotation work will probably start in the beginning and the end of my programs. I need to do it when I'm at max efficiency, because if this is something that I'm learning as a new movement to own, I must have the most energy possible. Would everyone here say that you're in a better or worse cognitive state after 5 sets of heavy squats? Better or worse? Just yell it out. Worse. I don't perform activities like that as efficiently as I should. So if I'm learning and acquiring a new pattern, I'm probably going to want to utilize that earlier on. My dynamic work to get myself ramped up will emphasize, do I have this mobility, do I have this mobility, do I have this mobility? Can I own this, can I own this, and can I own this? And then go into your activity. You can also do it as a finishing portion, because we understand that as trainers, one of the worst things you can tell your clients is that we're working on a corrective. People don't like to hear they're getting regressed. People don't like to hear that they're bad at something. So we hide the vegetables. We need to figure out what's the best way I can do this. So and I've had plenty of clients ask, well, what are we doing for core today? I want you to pick up that 24 kilo kettlebell, and I just want you to hold it. What do you want me to do with it? I just want you to hold it. How long? Until I say you're done. 60 seconds. Probably 30 seconds in, they go, holy crap, it's getting heavy. Where do you feel it? I feel it right in my obliques. A little different than those weird chops you were doing on your own by yourself, right? A little bit. So sometimes we need to implement this so people can feel this and understand the connection before anything else. Because us just saying it and driving it home and spitting the science at them will not make it drive home. Here's the major thing I want you guys to take away from this workshop, like I said before. Rotation, anti-rotation, dynamic mobility, in my opinion, I believe should be worked with every single client that we have. We need to understand that. Would you work rotation with a client who has fractured their spine, meniscus was shattered, plate and 6 screws in their hand, grade 1 separation at the AC joint, pretty banged up individual? Would you do rotational work with that person? Yes, no, maybe so?
At some point, you need to bring it to a certain level before you do that.
At some point, correct. So first answer, where are they at in their clearance? Are they cleared? And 2, just for the perspective, that person is me. I am that Dr. Bill. I am the meniscus. I am the separation. I am the fractured L4, L5. I am the plate and 6 screws in my hand. I've been in the emergency room 18 times in my life. That does not mean that I train differently in this, but can I own this pattern? The reason I focus on this is because I need to do this right. If I'm going to do activities that I love to do, I need to learn how to do them well. If I want to be able to pick up my grandchildren when I'm 85 years old, I need to do this stuff well now. Because it's not going to get easier. But I think we need to understand that our clients are not that age. Our clients are not what we think they are. And the worst thing that we can do in this field is underestimate their capabilities. Never peg somebody with a ceiling. It's our job to break those ceilings. It's our job to show somebody their maximum potential. What can you do? And a lot of that comes through this rotational training. A lot of this comes from the things that we allow them to do that make them excited to play and work out again. Are you guys willing to implement that kind of stuff to your clients? I hope so. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, so when it comes to actually progressing to rotation from like anti-rotation, is it more so just subjective on the client, or do you have a set standard where this person needs to do this amount of time of an anti-rotation exercise with this many reps smoothly, and then you can rotate? It's just purely subjective.
So I think it's subjective, but I think the one part that, for anyone that was here at John Russell's thing yesterday, that you can equate. Oh, perfect. So the question was, is there a specific criteria when it comes down to rotation or for anti-rotation before I progress them to rotation? And the answer to that is, can you own the movement for a certain amount of time? So like John Russell said, they do 25 rep squat because it comes out to about 45 seconds, and that's when the default pattern tends to go into play. So if I'm doing 8 to 10 reps of something, because we know if we're doing a new movement pattern, I'm roughly going to get 8 to 10 reps of quality reps before things start to really fall apart. Can I own that anti-rotation for that amount of time? I need to, right? How many pull-ups can somebody do? The first answer is however long they can hold on to the pull-up bar. Because if you can't grip it, you can't do the pull-ups. So I need to own that rotation. Can I keep this stable for this certain amount of time? Because then I start to introduce, okay, well now I'm going to do hip movement with it. Okay, well now I'm going to do hip movement and I'm going to do humeral movement. Okay, well now I'm going to do hip movement, humeral movement, and maybe add something else in. But that's where you progressively add that in. So before you start going, hey, let's go from, we did anti-rotation, so let's throw balls against the wall because I saw someone on Instagram and they have crazy abs and that looks cool. We need to think a little more logically before we head into that. It's a good question, though. Anybody else? Questions, concerns, confessions?
I do have one.
Oh, you opened your mouth at confessions and I got really nervous.
For the setup when you were doing the anti-rotation.
Okay.
So you were placed on this point, right? Normally I do it from this direction. Does it matter, or?
I think it just differentiates. So the question was, the resistance was pulling from the inside, essentially opposite of the forward leg. Is that the one way to do it or the other way to do it? You can do it in all different manners. You'll understand that so here's a simple perspective. So you can stand up if you want to. Hold it, interlock the fingers. You're going to face this way, if you can for me. So from here, what I want you to do is I want you to put your left leg forward and right leg back in a staggered stance. Good. Move both your feet a little more towards your midline. Yeah. How does that feel for your anti-rotation? More difficult? Switch your legs around now. Do your right leg in front and then your left leg in the back. Move it to midline. Which one felt easier? This one, right? Because your lead leg is standing here, it's able to support that. Glute medius is kicking in. It's more similar to your unilateral movements. So you're going to see that each of these patterns are inherently just a little bit different based on the biomechanics and where the resistance is coming from. But I need to challenge people, thank you, in different manners in order to prepare them for different situations. That's why the options are limitless when it comes down to how we can implement this type of core training and anti-rotational training, anti-flexion training, because we can rotate in and out of things and progress them in so many different ways that I could add in 8 years of programming just on this stuff, right? So you gotta play around with it, and that's definitely how you work that. But yeah, the direction matters for sure.
We're just kind of following up on what you said too. And once you finally progress to the rotation, if it's maybe like more of an advanced client or even maybe like an athlete, are you going to, is it like 50-50 now as far as sticking with rotation versus anti-rotation, or are you going to primarily focus on rotation now? Or is it
So the question is, once someone moves to the next threshold, are you going to split your timing essentially 50-50 between that and the previous one, or are you just going to emphasize on the one? You have to emphasize the foundation before you emphasize the ladder. So whether I'm doing ballistic rotation or whatever, I'm still going to have to do a dynamic mobility warm-up to get myself prepared. I'm still going to have to focus on core integrity before I elevate myself into that, right? Imagine, going into a baseball game without warming up. Imagine playing any game ever without warming up. I need to own that pattern first before I can really maximize it. Anybody else? So, mainly I want to thank you guys for being here, especially on the Sunday later in the afternoon. This is usually when people start to head out, so the fact that you guys are here for this presentation means more than you will understand. And I hope that you guys gained one bit of knowledge from this. I hope this workshop that NSCA puts on and this conference was worthwhile, because this is the situation where you can meet the people that you normally wouldn't get to meet and ask the questions that you wouldn't be able to ask them. So if there's one thing that I've learned at being in these conferences, make sure you take the time after workshops to meet that person that you have and ask whatever questions you can, and take as much information as possible, because the only way we get better at this as a team is by utilizing each other and learning those little bit of things. Okay? So I want to thank you guys so much for being out here. I really appreciate it, and any questions, feel free to ask, okay? Thank you guys.